Good morning. This is Dr. David A. Padgett. This is World Regional Geography 1010, Section 98B, Spring 2021 semester. I'm going to share my screen now so we can just jump right into things. So we are closing in on the end of the semester. There's only this week, next week for classes, and then we're in the finals week beginning on I guess whenever finals week begins. I'm either going to start the final exam on April the 23rd. I'll probably try to start on the 23rd just to give you all as much time as possible to get it done. So anyway, that's coming up. For this week, let me go to student view and go to the drop boxes. So for this week, you still have the Women in Water assignment, and notice it's due, well, it was due today at 11 o'clock. However, you are aware of the fact that with every assignment, there is basically a 12-hour grace period. And in fact, that assignment should actually be due at a different time. Okay, so the Women in Water assignment again is due at 12:30 today. I see one person turned in. And so for the rest of you all, that assignment is due at 12:30, and there's a 12-hour grace period, after which you'll lose 1 point for another 11 hours and 59 minutes. Then you'll lose 2 points. So the message is get it done. Don't worry about, the grace period extension, whatever you want to call it, only lasts for 5 days. So don't think that you have the rest of the semester to turn this thing in. But the point is that if you turn it in a couple of days late, you can still get a B if you do it well. So that's the message here. So try not to get zeros on any assignments in here. There's no reason why you should get a zero. You have a week to do the assignment. Then you have a couple more days to turn it in with a very minimal late penalty. So the goal is 450. Do the assignments, don't get any zeros, just keep piling up points, and that'll get you closer and closer to 450, which is an A in this class. So that's the mission. Keep working, keep turning in stuff. Do your best on each assignment, even if you turn in late, miss a few points, get as many points as you can, and get to that 450 mark and get the A. It's as simple as that. The same thing goes for the globe assignment. And again, those of you who are, let's start from the student here. Those of you who are planning careers in teaching, you should complete the globe assignment. And so if you have any questions about that, please let me know. It's very important that you get this portion of the assignment done. And so again, the same message to you all. There's a lot of grace period, extension period, et cetera, et cetera. So in the week that you had to do the assignment, if you didn't get it done, you still have some extra time. So those 2 assignments are still out there. Don't forget, you have article review 7 due tonight. I see that several of you have stepped up getting those article reviews done. I am making a pledge to have everything graded by April the 19th. So by April 19th, you should know where you stand. going into finals week. If you are still unsure about what your midterm grade is, just let me know. If you have a midterm grade of, say, a B, and you've been maintaining B work, done a decent job on the quizzes, and you continue to do the article reviews and just knock out these assignments, then you should be fine. You should be fine. Just the key is to continue to work. Don't slip off a cliff. Continue to work. Okay, speaking of work, you have 2 more assignments due this week. And again, there's an assignment for those of you who are not planning on being teachers, and there's an assignment for you who are planning on being teachers. So for those of you who are planning on having teaching careers, you will do writing assignment 5A. It's pretty straightforward. Writing assignment 5A, advancing childhood education through data and mapping. And so you will simply watch this 1-hour video. The video is called Advancing Early Childhood Education Through Data and Mapping. And you will then, in a Word document, write a 600 or more word essay where you would describe 3 examples based upon what you saw in the video of how early childhood education may be enhanced with GIS. You will describe 3 different types of map data referenced in the webinar and how they are applied to answer the questions related to ECE, and discuss at least 3 specific things you found most interesting about the video from the perspective of a future ECE teacher or any teacher. Remember, when you write an essay based upon a video in this class, it should have timestamps for where you saw certain things mentioned. You should also be sure to write this essay as if you're writing it to someone who knows nothing about early childhood education and nothing about, be very descriptive in your work. Don't write this essay to me. I gave you the assignment, so you're going to take a lot of shortcuts. You're going to make a lot of assumptions if you write this essay to me. Don't do that. Just get Dr. Padgett out of your mind when you write this essay. Okay, you're writing it to a layperson audience. Okay, if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, please let me know if you have any questions about the assignment. But it seems to me to be pretty straightforward. Okay, so the rest of you all who are not planning careers in teaching, you will complete this Climatographs assignment comparing Russia and CIS Climatographs to Latin American Climatographs. So this gets us into Unit D a little bit. And so you will, so here's the assignment itself. And so there's a video that will walk you through how to do the assignment. But I will still today kind of give you a little preview. And so here's the assignment. Writing assignment 5B. Comparing Russia and neighboring countries, Climatographs to Latin America and the Caribbean Climatographs. So you will select 8 Climatographs from cities using the Climate Charts website. Here are the instructions. One city must be from Mexico. One Climatograph must be from a city on any island in the Caribbean. One Climatograph must be from a city in a country in South America north of the Tropic of Capricorn. You know where that is. One Climatograph must be from a city in a country in South America south of the Tropic of Capricorn, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, we get into the in the chapter 4, and so those climographs must come from within various areas within the former Soviet Union countries. So I'm just going to walk you through this a little bit. So we go to the climatecharts.net site. And so it's a pretty user-friendly site, I think. So you notice these point symbols are at places in countries all over the world, or cities in countries all over the world. Really, it's weather station data. And so let's look at the instructions. Let's skip down to the new chapter. It says here, one climograph must be from a city in Russia. One climograph must be from a Central Asian country. One climograph must be from a Caucasus region country. And one climograph must be from a Slavic country. So you'll refer to chapter 4 in the Bradshaw textbook to determine which countries are Slavic countries. And so let's go to the textbook. So we're getting into chapter 4. And so here's chapter 4, images. And let's see, keep going here. Okay, figure 4.25, I happen to know has the Slavic countries. So just to, well, I'll get into that later on. But so here are the Slavic countries: Russia, Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine. So those are the 4 Slavic countries. So why don't we look at Minsk, Belarus. So here, Belarus. So yes, Minsk has some data available. Click on Minsk, then create charts. And here's the chart. Now we want to change this. See these 2 little buttons here? We want to change that to a bar graph combined with the line graph. So here's Minsk, Belarus, one of our cities. And so in one of the Slavic countries. Let's follow the instructions and look at a city in Latin America and the Caribbean. It says one climograph must be from a city in Mexico. Well, let's go to number 2. One climograph must be from a city on an island in the Caribbean. So let's go back to that site, and let's zoom out, and we'll go to an island, some island in the Caribbean. Let's see, Puerto Rico. I like Puerto Rico. Let's see, San Juan. Create charts. And if you noticed, well, let's try a different one. It's like San Juan isn't really cooperating. Let's try someplace else. Let's try Port of Spain, Trinidad. It's like things are going kind of slow here. Okay, so using the climatechart.net site, I've retrieved data for Port of Spain, Trinidad, and Tobago. And so now I'm going to go and get data for a country, in a Slavic country again. And in that case, we had Minsk, Belarus. See how this works for us today. Come on. Looks like it's doing better now. And so here's a neat thing about this program, about this site, is that it puts the wait a minute. Okay, now that's better. Notice it puts the climate graph side by side. So it gives you an opportunity to do side by side comparisons. So as you complete the assignment, for each city, you have the name of the city, the latitude, longitude, location. You can either get that from Google Maps, or you can get it right off of the chart itself. Now, the Kerpin climate classification, you'll have to get from the textbook. So if we go into the Bradshaw textbook and we go to images, and so this would be image 4.2 for Russia and neighboring countries. And so there is Belarus, and it's solidly in the DC continental temperate climate regions. So you would write that Minsk, Belarus is within the DC continental temperate climate region. Of course, for Trinidad, we'd have to go to chapter 11, figure 11.2. And Trinidad looks like it's pretty solidly within the AW climate, Kerpin climate region. And so here we have Trinidad and Tobago, and we're comparing it with Minsk in Belarus, Minsk City in Belarus. So after you've collected all your data, so you'll have 8 climographs all together, and you'll paste the climographs in the space below. I can show you a quick way to do that now. It's very, very easy. You just go here, hit PNG, and then here's this is Trinidad. This is so this would be at Port of Spain, and I would save this file, climate chart. Trinidad, save it, and then you can just pop it right into, see, one city must be from a country on an island in the Caribbean. Boom, there. Insert picture, and there it is. And then of course you also paste a map of the city and environs in the space below. You can simply go to Google Maps, perhaps. And so you have a choice. You can either use this view, or if you zoom out far enough that you get kind of the boundaries of the city, maybe use a satellite view so you can just get a better idea of some of the landscape. And then you can just simply use your print screen function, and it doesn't have to be pretty. Just paste that map right into your page like that. And there you have it. You might, even if I don't think you'll end up with any of that in there, but that's simply how you would complete the assignment for each city in terms of getting the climographs in and the other data and information. So your instructions are, you'll write a 700 or more word essay comparing the climographs based upon climate controls. And so you have a website here to assist you with that process. And so climate controls are physical processes that control climate. And so they include latitude, land versus water, and so on and so forth. So in your climate comparison, you will actually compare the data in these two climographs. What I would do is look at extremes. So when you get your 4 Latin American climographs and your 4 Commonwealth of Independent States climographs, let's just say for argument's sake that Belarus has the widest temperature range of any city that you've found, and let's say Trinidad and Tobago has the widest temperature range, and that's probably we're just going to compare temperature ranges. So if you notice, well, what is a temperature range? The temperature range is the difference between the highest and lowest average monthly temperature experienced all year. So for Minsk, that is July is the high, 19.3. January is a low, negative 4.2. So that difference would be 23.5 degrees Celsius, which is about a 70-degree Fahrenheit difference. Okay. So if you imagine, this is like comparing, say, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is maybe not that low, but anyway, a pretty wide temperature range. Compared with Trinidad and Tobago, the temperature range is, let's see, the high is 27.8 degrees Celsius and the low is 26 degrees Celsius. So there's only a 27.8 degrees Celsius and 26. So there's only a 1.8 degrees Celsius difference in temperature throughout the year in Trinidad, in Port of Spain at Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, now, so make note of those data. Then next, the question is, well, what are the climate controls that have resulted in these regions having such a different, temperature range, right? Well, one of the climate controls is land versus water. And you can read about, so here we have Iceland, which is an island, and notice its temperature range versus Yakutsk in Russia, and notice its temperature range is much wider than Reykjavik, Iceland. Why is that? Even though these two places are at the same latitude practically, why such a wide temperature range? Well, Iceland is an island, and so water has a modifying effect upon temperature. because water heats and cools more, 5 times more slowly than land does. And so islands and peninsulas and places that are on the leeward side of oceans tend to have more narrow temperature ranges. So that's one climate control that's impacting this difference. The second climate control is latitude. So let's look at latitude. Trinidad is at 10 degrees north latitude, and Minsk is at 53 degrees north latitude. 53 degrees latitude, that's in our part of the world, that's in Canada, right? So the wide, the difference in latitude would have a greater impact upon the annual temperature. So let's look at the mean annual temperature for Trinidad and Tobago, which is only 10 degrees north of the equator. It's 27 degrees Celsius. That's approaching 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I think it's more than that's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But then if we look at Minsk, Belarus, its average temperature year round is 7.6 degrees Celsius. That's a little bit less than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, that's a little bit less than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So big difference in terms of mean annual temperature. In that, the obvious control is latitude. So maybe you'll look at the mean temperature of the city in the Caribbean that's at the highest latitude compared to the one that you find at the highest latitude in the Commonwealth of Independent States. And maybe you look at the lowest latitude city and other things. And don't ignore precipitation. So here we have precipitation in Trinidad and Tobago, and if you can notice, it's relatively moist. Here we have June. Well, if we look at annual precipitation, Trinidad and Tobago gets 3 times as much precipitation, close to 3 times as much precipitation as Minsk. So, well, you might ask, well, why is that? Well, the reason is kind of obvious. If you look at the it's at the fact that the Kerpin climate region for Trinidad is AW, which is a tropical climate, which is tropical summer rain climate. But what's interesting is that this climograph really doesn't strongly illustrate a seasonal climate. It seems as if there's a lot of precipitation here during most of the year. There's only this February, March, April period where there's a little bit less precipitation. But if it's given that there are 25 millimeters per inch, and so here we have August and July, which are at approaching 250 millimeters. So that's about 10 inches of precipitation for August and 10 inches of precipitation for June, just to give you an idea of how much more precipitation there is. But this is a weak seasonal climate. Notice you have, for several months, over 100 millimeters, over 200 millimeters, or approaching 200 millimeters of precipitation. And then from January through about April, there is considerably less precipitation than in those other months. So it is somewhat seasonal. It's not a strong seasonal pattern. There's definitely a seasonal pattern. Whereas in Minsk, there's not nearly as much precipitation. And you'll notice that there's precipitation all year long. So you might look at perhaps how many of your cities in Latin America and the Caribbean have some form of seasonal precipitation? There probably will be none in the former Soviet Union, but who knows? That's why we do this kind of work. That's why we do this kind of analysis, to look at what the weather stations have collected and do comparisons. So this is a pretty straightforward assignment. I think it is. But if you have any questions, the key is to get started early. Maybe just take one day and just get all your climographs and climograph data. Or just one day and just get all the climographs. Then come back the next day and get the information from the climographs. And then the next day, get into your analysis, instead of just trying to do this all in one sitting, which will take you a while, and you'll get frustrated and tired, and you might not do your best work. So also make mention of any climate-related hazards that might be associated with some of these regions: extreme cold, hurricanes, drought, depending upon what cities you find. Okay, so those are the assignments for this week, in addition to article review 8. Don't forget to do article review 8. It's due next Monday. So don't forget about that. So let's move on into the reading assignment for this week, which is physical and environmental problems in Russia and neighboring countries. And so that takes us to textbook, and that will be Images, Chapter 4, Figure 4.2. And one of the first things that you should notice when looking at Figure 4.2, as we move from Unit C to Unit D, is how different it is. First of all, you'll notice that there are no tropical climates anywhere in this region. None. No A climates. You have B climates, C climates, D climates, and then a large expanse of E climates. We saw very little presence of D climates in Latin America and the Caribbean, and very little presence of E climates and F climates. So this is a very different climatic environment. So it should be relatively simple to do a climate comparison here. So if you notice that when we look at the this figure on climate, we will move forward and look at the land cover. So remember, there's a direct relationship between land cover and climate. So we'll go to Figure 4.4 and look at the natural vegetation. So there's a cross section XY here that goes from north X to Y south, and then that has an illustration with various facts and figures around it. So if you notice that on this map at Figure 4.4, starting in the north, we have tundra plants, which is in the same area as tundra climate, and then you see the tundra vegetation. The tundra is a very harsh environment, very difficult for any kind of plant life to exist and survive in that area of the world that has some similar climate types. Then as we move toward the south, we get into this brown color area symbol. which represents the steppe, excuse me, not the steppe. That region represents the pine and fir forest. And so this is this part of the forest, and then this larch and birch. These are large expanses of evergreen or needle leaf evergreen, as you can see. And that region is known as the taiga forest. So this very large needle leaf tree dominant forest that stretches into and across the entire region is known as the northern coniferous forest, or the taiga. And you can see that it's a very large region, mostly needle leaf, pine trees, and firs stretching across this entire expanse of this region. It's a very significant earth ecosystem, the taiga forest. So you see that as we move to the south, we start to get into a more of a grassland steppe region. When we get into those D climate areas, also a deciduous and mixed forest that might be somewhat similar to some places here. So we start to move south. We get out of the coniferous forest, we get into more of deciduous forest, and then we get further south, we move into a grassland region here. That's illustrated here on the chart step. And then finally, we arrive at a desert region to the south here. It's a very large region of desert and semi-desert here as we get into the Central Asian countries. So it's not the same as the Latin America and Caribbean climate and vegetation cover, but still somewhat diverse. Somewhat diverse in terms of its coverage. Maybe a little bit more harsh environment, but clearly diverse. So when we get into this this area here around at the end near letter Y, large expanse of desert, if you notice, there's a light blue color area symbol there that represents the Aral Sea. And so I'm going to talk about the Aral Sea in the context of the regional climate right now. So if you'll notice in your reading assignment, you'll notice there's reference made to the Aral Sea disaster. And so here's some satellite images of the Aral Sea that in 1977, 1989, 2006. And if I go to ArcGIS Online and we go to map and then navigate to the Aral Sea, you will see that there's been some quite dramatic changes over time. Sea, and so here is the Aral Sea today. Well, that's the map symbol. Let's change the base map to imagery and let's see what we see now. So let's go back to that Aral Sea disaster image, 1977, 1989. Notice how it's starting to dry up. Notice there was no North Aral Sea. This was all part of one large body of water. It started to dry up and now it's basically almost disappeared. just to give you some perspective, because sometimes when we look at places on the other side of the world, we tend not to care. It's not over here. But let's just, or we're not familiar, but let's use the measure tool and let's go here, turn this to miles. And so if we start at the northern end of what used to be the Aral Sea down to the southern end, it's about 300 or so miles, perhaps. Go back and look. Yeah, at least 300 miles, easily 300 miles from end to end. Okay, so if we keep pushing south, so let's look at that relative to a place that which we're more familiar, and that is, say, Lake Michigan. How does that compare to Lake Michigan? So Lake Michigan is actually smaller than the Aral Sea used to be. So can you imagine if Lake Michigan, or perhaps Lake Superior? See, Lake Superior is about 350 miles across. And can you imagine if Lake Superior dried up, or if Lake Michigan just dried up over about a 30 or 40-year period? We would be in, I don't know what would happen. It would be mass panic. That would be a disaster of immense proportions. Obviously that isn't happening here, but it's happened in Central Asia, and so what are the causal factors? Is it because of the environment? Is it because of humans? Well, it's a little bit of both. So if we go back to the textbook, of course, notice that, and we go back to figure 4.2, obviously the area around the Aral Sea falls into the desert category and the steppe category, two relatively dry B climate regions. And so if I scroll into the chapter, we'll get to the this figure 4.8, which focuses upon the Aral Sea environmental disaster. And you'll see that the Aral Sea was, or is, fed by two rivers, the Sierra Daria and the Amu Daria. Now, those two rivers are called exotic rivers. Exotic rivers are rivers that flow through long areas or flow for long lengths through deserts, right? So, well, where's the water coming from, you might ask? If you notice here to the south, you have the Hindu Kush mountain range. And so these mountain ranges, let's see if we go here to the satellite image, you notice that these mountain ranges are very high. They're snow-capped. So the snow melt from these mountains is what feeds those two rivers flowing into into the Aral Sea. And so, or at least what used to be the Aral Sea. So the source of the water is here. It's able to flow through. There's enough water that's able to flow through the desert into this low elevation area known as the Aral Sea, or what used to be known as the Aral Sea. So the question is, well, how did this happen? Well, notice that the Aral Sea straddles the border between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. So you have two different nations sharing a common resource. and noticed that they didn't do a good job of sharing. There's an entire science behind sharing natural resources such as the atmosphere or the oceans, or in this case, the Aral Sea. You would think, well, this is pretty simple. We know that we have to share our resources or we'll use the resource up, as it happened in this case. Well, first of all, how did these human beings destroy this resource? What'd they do? If you notice on the map in the textbook at figure 4.8, there's these green color area symbols that represent irrigated areas. So think about it. These regions are very dry. They're let's go back to the climate chart site. Let's go back. Let's take out Minsk. And I think we've done enough with Minsk. Well, let's remove Minsk and let's keep Trinidad and Tobago. And let's get the city that's as close as we can get to the Aral Sea. So let's click here. Create charts. Looks like it's going to work for us. So here is Aralsko, Moor, Kazakhstan. Notice that the precipitation is, the annual precipitation is 136.9 millimeters. So remember, there are about 25 millimeters per inch. So we're looking at just over 5 inches of precipitation for the entire year for this city, which is right there in proximity to the Aral Sea. So this is a relatively dry region. It's a dry region, period. Well, relatively dry. Desert, clearly a desert. And so, but people live there, and in order for them to have any kind of agricultural productivity, they have to engage in irrigation-based agriculture. In other words, they're drawing water out of the river, and because they're in an area that doesn't get a whole lot of precipitation. So you can see on this satellite image that green area there and this green area here. That's where human beings have irrigation-based agriculture. It's the type of agriculture that's practiced all over the region, or any region where it's relatively dry. So you have these two countries trying to share this resource. The Kazakhs are drawing water out of the Sir Dare River. The Uzbeks are drawing water out of the other feeder river. And you wind up with this lake being sucked dry, literally. So there's a whole science associated with training people to share resources. Think about it. Children have to be taught to share. You don't have a child that says, "Oh, I have a toy. I'll let my brother and sister use it too." And then what happens? Kid not only does he or she want his toy, he wants all the toys. Right? The heck with my brothers and sisters, right? And that child has to be taught. So sharing is not part of human nature. And so as we expand from families to societies, the same kind of training has to take place. And if we don't train or educate governments into how to share resources, what you get is this kind of an environmental disaster where the resource is destroyed because of human avarice and greed. And so that's what happened here. Like I said, it was a perfect mix of, you have a dry environment, you have, and then you have human beings. This is a very good example that falls under the human land tradition of geography, obviously, and also the earth science tradition because of the physical systems that are involved. So the Aral Sea disaster is something that we should consider when we are looking at climate and climate change. If you notice, getting back to the climate charts page, so here's another extreme. I mean, and when you pick your climographs, maybe you'll find the one that has the lowest amount of precipitation amongst the 8. Find the one that has the highest, and then compare those two. So have a plan. So when you work on this assignment, have a plan. Just say, I'm going to find 4 pairs of climographs, one based upon temperature range, one based upon precipitation average, one based upon temperature, or 2 based upon temperature average, and 2 based upon something else. And go into a detailed comparison of those climographs based upon their variables. Remember, again, you're not writing this essay to me. Be very detailed in your descriptions and explanations. Don't take any shortcuts. Be sure to include any data that you describe in your essay. So for example, don't take these 2 graphs and write something that says the climograph at Trinidad and Tobago looks like it's a much wetter environment than the environment at Eraskomor, Kazakhstan. No. How wet is it? How much wetter is it? You would simply say, you would have the precipitation sums for both cities, and then you might say that there is 1,795 millimeters of precipitation on annual at Trinidad and Tobago, minus 136.9 millimeters, and then you take that difference and you might make note of that. And then, of course, you discuss the climate controls. Now, in this case, now I'm not trying to turn you into climatologists. In some cases, you don't have enough knowledge at this point to really get into the finer points behind the differences in the climate controls. But you do have enough information that you can just look at where, these ocean currents and maybe some other things. And so just make as many educated observations as you can. But the key is to be organized and have a plan. That way, your essay is organized and easy to read. The easier to read your essay is, guess what? The happier I'll be. Chances are you'll get a decent grade. If I'm reading your essay and I'm like, what is this person talk? Where is this going? That's not good. Okay. So as always, if you have any questions about this assignment, please ask in advance. The key is to start early. Notice I don't get questions about assignments due on Monday till Sunday. Try to pace yourself out. Get started today. Like I said, just say today I'm going to get my climographs and maps onto this page. Just make that a goal. Boom, climographs and maps. Don't worry about doing anything else. Then tomorrow come back to it and say, okay, now I'm going to start getting the rest of the information, the name of the city, and then maybe the next day, now I'll come back and start analyzing the data. And then by Friday, you have a draft that you can email to me, and I can look at it and say, wow, this is great. This is wonderful work. Or I'll say, you need to improve this. This is missing. But at the end of the day, by the time you turn it in next Monday, or whenever you turn it in, you've had a critique from me, you've gotten started on time, you've done your best work, and you'll get that A that you want. Okay, that's just my advice. I think you should follow it, but we'll see. We'll see. So I think that this is a good place to stop today. So let me just go back and revisit what's due this week again. So you have writing assignment 4, Women in Water. For those of you not planning on teaching, that's due today at 12:30 p.m. You have the Globe assignment 1. That's for those of you who are planning a career in teaching. This assignment is very important. If you have any problems, get in touch with me. Okay, this is not something that you will. It might not be that you can't figure it out because you aren't able to understand it. This is some parts of the Globe account sign up process can be a little confusing. So just let me know. And Article 7 is due tonight. Don't miss out on your article reviews. And then, of course, do Article Review 8. Is due next week. And so at this time, are there any questions? Okay, so going to stop recording and thank you for your attendance.